Yeah, and I think you make a good point about like the way in which South Carolina generates pressure. It's all of the above. And did you catch Wes on the broadcast? Maybe this has been talked about and I've just kind of missed it or glossed over it. But Clayton White this offseason took a deep dive and called it his summer studies to figure out, okay, I'm a defensive coach, but I've also been on the offensive side of the ball. Remember, Clayton was a running backs coach, I think, in his earlier days in college. So he's also spent time on the offensive side of the ball. And he tried to think of it in reverse of what gives you trouble offensively as a coach to block. What gives running backs and tight ends trouble? What gives offensive fronts trouble? And I know you may say, well, that's silly. Why don't all coaches think of it that way? But a little bit different, like just taking a different perspective, maybe from what they have in the past at South Carolina under his leadership. And so he uncovered some new schemes, went and visited some teams, figured out what they were doing, and incorporated some of that into the scheme, right? So I think when you look at South Carolina, you have so many different layers of why they're better up front. And I mean, Wes, this isn't a team where you've seen it like build from like, they were pretty darn good last year. Now they're elite. They went from could not rush the passer last season, huge problem, to now one of the best pass rush teams in college football. They do have a lot of guys back, right? So great job this offseason with player retention in the portal era. You had some guys that could have tried their hand at the pros. You got them to come back. You're very old. You're veteran laden. Look at your defensive tackle rotation. How many old veteran guys that you have there, whether it's Tonka, Boogie, TJ Sanders as a third year on the field player. But then you added in, obviously, Kennard as a fifth-year guy. You have a super freshman in Dylan Stewart. You have Gilbert Edmond back. You have BT, Brian Thomas Jr. He's been around a while. So you have veterans. You also have great kids. They play extremely hard. And, of course, they are very talented. And then you mix in the scheme. So if you go and you look at some of the or all of the sacks, you will find different things. You'll see some where they're running games and twists up front, and it's a linebacker getting the sack, right, coming free. You'll see some where the Kennard sack that you mentioned, Wes, I'm sitting there in the stands. Kennard's on my side of the field, and I think what was that, a 3rd and 8, or maybe it was even a 4th down, and I'm sitting there going, Kennard is queued up. This is going to be a one-on-one, and he's going to beat this guy and get a sack, and boom, he just goes right around him. So South Carolina has the capability of doing all those things. They can get coverage sacks. They can get scheme wins. They can overload you. They can also just line up with 4 and say, my guy's better than yours, and we're going to come after you and get the sack. So I think it's all those things that they've all kind of built on each other to create this kind of perfect storm of pass rush juice this year.
Yeah, and they I think along the same lines, man, like he was deep in the bag on Saturday, I feel like, and just yeah. They were like, we're gonna just hammer these guys with different looks. And you could tell everybody on both sides, like everybody was kind of feeling themselves a little bit, I think, and they were just like, hey, we're gonna let this thing loose and let it fly. And so I mean, there was, and I was actually saving this, but I want to talk about it. I was saving this for my details you may have missed. I'll try to find it and make sure I get the personnel right. There was one look. Already got it saved somewhere. There was a look. I looked out there. I was like, what is this? And like they're getting deep into the bag, like I said, in terms of just twists, stunts, games, whatever you want to call them. And, I think it's a good point, man. Like, yes, they have upgraded the talent on defense. Like, there's no doubt the edge guys, I mean, they're elite. Let's call it what it is. And they brought back the defensive linemen. Like, can you imagine, dude? Travis mentions, hey, Garnet Trust, formula for winning is elite edge players. And it's a great point. But, hey, it's been lost a little bit. Player retention, like, that's NIL is very important in player retention. So, keeping those interior D-line guys at South Carolina to where hey, let's just double the edge guys. Let's take care of that. No, you can't do that against this bunch because the interior guys are really, really good as well. But Chris, at one point, they had a 3rd and long look that had Kennard, Dylan Stewart, Brian Thomas, TJ, and Tonka all on the field at once. Like that's normally you put the extra defensive line guy out there in like a running situation or a goal line situation. But they had Brian Thomas and one of the other defensive linemen or edge guys both split out wide, like wide 9. And which I think that's what a lot of people call that with Kennard as well. Just wide 9. You're just like, you're getting your defensive end, your edge guy as wide as possible. And it's because you're not worried about them creasing you with the run. You're like, all right, this is a definite passing situation. Get him as wide as possible and just dare this tackle to block him. And, you know, it worked out exactly how it was designed. But they basically put 5 rushers out there, and they had 2 of them on the same side split way out wide. And they got a sack or a quarterback hit off of it as well. And I was just like, I don't think I've seen them use that look at all this year. Maybe they have a couple times or something, and I just missed it. But it was just, it's like, all right, they've probably got to the point where they're like, all right, the guys are loving it. This is fun. We have a veteran group. Let's just keep tacking. Let's keep stacking basically new looks that we can throw at teams. And then, you know, I even think that look where they show the double A-gap pressure on 3rd and long, and then they drop them back out into coverage. And they've done that a lot this year. But the fact that they are willing to bring 6 on 3rd and long means you have to, as an offensive line, as a offensive play caller, quarterback, trying to get everything set, you have to acknowledge that. Like you can't just say, oh, it's 3rd and long. This is a simulated blitz. We're just getting 4. You have to acknowledge that those 2 linebackers who are pressing up on you in the A gap, that double mug look, you have to acknowledge they may come, but then when they drop out, you've already changed your protection and changed your play based on it. And it maybe gets you out of the look you initially wanted. So they've been fantastic. I think it's definitely more than we've got better pass rushers. Let's just roll the ball out there and let them go get the quarterback. Like this is not a just rush for, hey, go win your battles. I mean, it's different. And I think, Chris, that does probably help just in terms of team building as well, because all the guys get to kind of play a little bit of a hand in getting that pressure as opposed to just feeling like it's a dominant guy or 2.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everybody gets to have fun out there, Wes. There was a couple other defensive looks that I noticed where, you know, I think there was one where Bam Martin Scott came in and he was basically like, he came on a blitz, but he was basically screening a guy, right, in a game. Like he's hitting a gap to basically screen off, wall off a guard so somebody else can come in the same gap. You've got there was a delayed safety blitz where they dropped I think an end or maybe even a tackle. I don't have it in front of me. Back into coverage. They were doing all sorts of stuff, right? And, you know, this game, Wes, and we'll get to the offense, I'm sure, so I don't want to go too deep into it, but this game started perfectly for South Carolina to take on the identity that this team was built to take on. You know, this is a team that's built more, as we know, to play great defense, rush the passer, force them to go up and down the field on you. May give up some explosive plays here and there, but that's fine. You'll take your chances. Hey, you got to score 3 or 4 times on us, and on a few of those drives, you're going to have to go 75, 80 yards. That's going to be tough against this defense, because inevitably you're going to get in 3rd and 6, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 at times, and it's going to be hard to convert those, frankly, on a down-to-down basis against this defense. And then offensively for South Carolina, run the football, hit some explosives here and there, and not turn the ball over, right? And one of those aspects was missing up until this past weekend for the most part. But I think the early start for South Carolina, literally getting a pick on the first play, scoring, running the football, getting a fumble return for a touchdown, having a pick six, that sets it up now where your whole team could go out, play fast and free. Every single bit of the pressure is now on Oklahoma to go out and score, make up a 21-point deficit. Again, if South Carolina did nothing most of the day offensively and just knelt on the ball. For an Oklahoma offense that's been struggling, scoring 21 points in a game against this defense was always going to be tough, right? So you're able to go out, have fun, play fast, play with your hair on fire if you're this defense. You had a lot of pass rush opportunities. They were going to have to throw more. You got them in a lot of third downs anyway. Nightmare matchup for the Sooners. Then offensively, you're able to go out there, play your game. You're not having to force things. You're not having to play from behind. And I think that helped out the offense as well.